Hi, and thanks for joining our learning series. My name is Mike Cohane, and today we'll be talking about LLM capabilities within the workflows themselves. This is a very exciting capability, and what this is going to do is bring the intelligence of AI inside of our workflows and give us the ability to reduce potentially the complexity of our workflows by pushing some of the things like data transformations into the LLM action ourselves. Let's take a look at some examples and see how we can do this. Let's get going. Let's get started back in our workspace. What you can see here is I have a new workflow, JSON placeholder web service with AI. What I've done is basically cloned one of our previous lessons and greatly simplified it. Let's take a look at it. If we go in, you can see that, again, a very simple workflow. I'm going to call the JSON placeholder with a given result, users. I'm going to then parse the body that's returned with a JSON path query to get the response body. I'll do the same thing with the web service for posts and parse that as well. And then I'm going to set a variable. That variable is my output results. It's just a string. And in that, I'm going to store the response body from the users and the response bodies from the posts. And we're just going to do this and take a look and see what that looks like. Let's go ahead and run it. All right, that ran pretty quick as expected. And let's take a look at our data. Now the data here is what we would expect. Here's the user's request bodies, Leon Graham, ID number 1, and on and on and on. So not very pretty, and I don't know if I would call that massively informative, but it works. Now my question would be, what if I wanted to do two things? What if I wanted to format this in a much cleaner manner so it was easier to read? But I didn't want to go through all the hassle of figuring out how to do that. Second, what if I passed in a name like Leon Graham and I correlated it to all the posts? So if you notice, we have names here and we have posts. And the only correlation between that is the ID. What if I was to go through, given an input name, and automatically correlate those together and produce that as an output? How could I do that? And this is where we're going to use our LLM and lean on it to do the heavy lifting for this data transformation. Let's see how that's done. Okay, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in an AI action between the response body calculations, the JSON path queries, and where we set variables. So I'm going to come over here to the activities, and you see there's a category called AI. I'm going to open that. Now, in my case, there's 2 LLM prompts. Ignore that. I'm in a development environment, messing around with some things. You'll only see this single one. And if we hold a cursor over there, it'll tell us a little bit about what this does, and it explains to it how it interacts with LLMs. And I'm going to show you how to set that up in a moment anyway. Let's copy that over and drop it in. All right, so we have a blank activity for an LLM prompt. Let's see what's required in order to use it. So if we come over to the right, we get a description. Now we could change this, and we could change this LLM prompt, and we should, and we'll come back and do that to make this more descriptive, because if you remember in our earlier learning series, every description in the activities will be reflected back via the MCP server to the AI assistant when we run these workflows through the AI assistant. So we're always cognitive of what these descriptions and display names say. Now, the target on this is going to be different. We're going to override the JSON placeholder web service, and we're going to do a different target. We're going to select, in this case, my OpenAI account. Now, notice I have some other LLM capable targets that I could be using. I'm going to explain to you why we have different ones and how you can choose what best suits your needs. So in my case, I'm just going to use OpenAI for the moment. All right, so I have an OpenAI account. Where did I get that and how did I set that up? Let's go over and go back into our targets section as we did in earlier lessons and set this up. All right, we're back in the automation targets section, and you can see that we have a few different targets here of interest. I have a circuit AI endpoint That's an Azure AI endpoint. Think of that as a Bridge IT AI LLM that I can interact with. And I'll show you how that's configured in a moment. But if we come down here, we have a campus OpenAI account. We'll start with this because this might be more familiar to people. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to set up a general description. This is my campus OpenAI account. And I'm going to use keys for that in order to describe how to interact with it and authorize. Let's see how I added these keys and what they look like. So we'll head over here to account keys. All right, here's a whole bunch of account keys. We're going to focus on two, the Circuit Open API and the Campus Open AI. Let's click on OpenAI keys. Now, this is going to tell the target, the OpenAI target, how I'm going to access it. So what you have to add here is your SDK key for OpenAI, if you in fact use that. So all I have to do is enter my key there so that my LLM requests will be authorized against it. So there is a cost for using this for your personal SDK key. Depends how you've set it up with OpenAI. So it would be relative to however you've set that up. But pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at our second option. If I cancel out of this, this is Cisco's OpenAI implementation running up on Azure. And we can set this up just as easily as a target for our LLM activity. And there'll be others. But for now, in this learning series, these two are present, so I'm showing you these two. If we click on Circuit OpenAI, just like the previous OpenAI account, we set up our keys and credentials so that we can authorize against the circuit. I'm not going to go into details on how you obtain these keys. You can find them on the website and get the best practices for obtaining them. And all you'll do when you receive back your credentials, no different than how you get them from OpenAI. You'd enter them here and they would be authorized to ensure that they work against your particular target. Now we're back in our workspace and we're ready to continue. I'm going to click on my LLM prompt. You can remember I've come through here and I've clicked on my Campus OpenAI account. Again, I could have done my Circuit AI account as well, and there'll be others. The account keys, that's all taken care of. I get down here to model name. Now this describes, since I'm using OpenAI, which model in OpenAI do I want to use? ChatGPT 4, ChatGPT 5, etc. Mini, however you want to do it. In our case, I'm going to do GPT 4.0-mini. That's what I'm going to use. I get good performance out of that. I don't see any reason to switch to 5 just yet, unless this doesn't work all of a sudden. Okay, that brings us to the interesting part of this action for the LLMs. There's two pieces here, a chat message and a system prompt. What's the difference between these two? Let me add in a chat message. What this is going to do is provide context to the LLM of why are you talking to it. Remember, in a normal natural language conversation, you're asking questions, you're getting responses. This sets all the context up for the LLM to understand what you're talking about. What's your purpose? What are you doing here? Is this part of a previous conversation? Is this a new question? How should it interpret it? And it uses a thing called roles for that, assistant, system, and user. Don't worry too much about understanding how this all works, but let me put up a quick slide here that shows you generally what these three things mean. And going through the list here, the first one is a user role. In this case, you're telling AI, hey, I'm a general user, I'm giving you some prompts. This is the context of what my prompt will be about. Very simple. An assistant role, picture the case where you have a series of LLMs that are asking questions, and you want each LLM in that chain to build on the previous LLM answer. So in order to do that, you need to keep passing context. So when you're in an assistant role, you'll pass it context from your previous conversations, and it will be able to build on those in subsequent answers. So that's very handy. The final one, the system role, you can do a lookup on that. This doesn't so much deal with exchanges from the user or the assistant as much as setting characteristics of the AI and how it should react to prompts. And you can look up online. There's great documentation on this. All right, let's get back. For our case, we're going to be doing a user. And now I'm going to explain to the user, to the LLM, generally, what am I trying to do here? Let me paste something in. Okay, you're a handy data transformation tool. You take in complex data structures and help clean them up to make them more relevant and easy to read. You can make this more complex if you want, but I found in my general usage, a simple statement of what this LLM prompt is doing is more than enough. All right, now we get down to the guts of what do you want this to do? It knows what it is. What do you want it to do? That's where the system prompt comes in. So I'm going to paste in a system prompt here, and then let me explain it to you. All right, I pasted that in. Let's break that down a little bit. I'll make this a little bigger. So what I'd like it to do is analyze two JSON structures, in this case, the users and the posts. And what I want it to do is to look in the JSON structure for the users and find each unique ID that corresponds to a user. The second structure has all the posts, which has the ID field but doesn't have the user field in it. Now I could write complex loops here that go through and figure out how to correlate those, but I don't have to. What I can ask this tool, this LLM, to do is use the ID to cross-reference the two JSON structures and provide a clean output that indicates for each user the username and how many posts were found. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide it the structures. Here are the structures, and I'll use our same format we always do, same method for finding data. I'm going to click here on the X, and I'm going to look on my activity for users and find the JSON path query that returned that structure. So there's the body. And then I'll do the same thing for posts. And I'll link to that. So the posts JSON path query is down here. Posts. All right. That should be enough for it to calculate what the correct output should be. Now, let's just go down a little bit more. I can add structured output here. I can create variables and I can have them filled in based on the type of information coming back and store data there. Let's not bother with that for just right now because you don't need that initially to get going, and I'd like you to understand the fundamentals first. So let me close that and let's just run that. We'll get an error if we try to run it. Well, we could run that. Let's just run that. We're not going to change the set variables. Let's go ahead and validate that and run it. All right, so this kicks off, and we got an error on the LLM prompt. I'm pretty sure I know what this is. Remember, I was pointing at that 4.0. But let's take a look at the error. It's always good to debug. Make this a little bigger, easy to read. I'm going to go all the way to the end. There's all kinds of information. GP4 4.0 mini. Looks like they've retired that, so that doesn't exist. I probably should go right to 5.0. Let's just go, and I already know that this is almost certainly that it should be 4.1 mini at this point. Let's just change this quickly to 4.1. I recommend you go to 5.0 since this mini would probably get retired at some point too. All right, let's run that with the corrected and let's see how that does. Now it looks much better. Okay, it went through, did the LLM prompt. That was pretty quick. And let's see what it got back for an answer. So I'm going to click on the LLM prompt, expand that. And we should see all the information. There's our content, or user. There's our system prompt, and you can see how it's filled in the information from the users, all that data. There's the posts, all that data. And then I can see, oh boy, that's a lot of data. Here's my formatted output. Here's the content. Here's the clean output indicating the username and the count of posts found for their ID. Boom. It's calculated all for me. So in one step, I've done that full data transformation. That's pretty cool. Let's finalize this, modify it, and let's just get that cleaned up so I can show you how do you point at that output. So in our set variables, again, make this a little bigger. Right now we assign the user body from all this. Let's erase all that and let's point it at the output of the LLM prompt. So that's going to be our activities, LLM prompt, content. That will give it all that same content. Let's run that. Now we should be able to look at our variable when the LLM prompt comes back. It's done. Let's go look at our variable. So there is a beautiful structure of how this looks when formatted properly. This can be very powerful for you when developing workflows. You can greatly simplify your workflows by pulling in AI LLMs. Now, a note to the designers. Remember, workflows is all about being deterministic. So you want to make sure you use this in ways that are not going to create variability in responses. In something like this, we don't have to worry about data transformation. It's going to do the right thing every time. If you find any kind of variability, it's because of your prompt. Improve your prompts, and that almost certainly will go away. So we have high confidence in doing this. We just don't want to introduce LLMs that can bring in a degree of variability in output configurations. As I look to continue doing configurations, I may or may not want to use an LLM depending on the action I'm applying, because I want to keep that deterministic nature intact. Okay, now we could stop right here and everything would work great. Here's some extra credit for your homework if you wanted to do this. I've deleted the general description after the first sentence because I want this to work with AI Assist. So for homework, go ahead and in here and update your description so this better represents what this workflow is doing now and the logic correlation it's doing. And run this from AI Assistant with a good prompt that would find just this workflow and see if you can run it from AI Assist just as easily. The previous lesson on AI Assist will give you all the fundamental lessons if you haven't done that. Okay, I hope you found this informative and helpful. Let us know how you do here. We'd love to get your feedback on what you're doing to in your own workflows to design these and how they come out and how you're using these capabilities. Thank you very much.